Why did you feel it's so important? Because it started 3 years ago, isn't it? In 2017.
Right.
So tell me about that.
Well, I mean, Nairobi is a really cosmopolitan city, and it felt like an atrocity to have a city that doesn't have a vibrant and lively film festival, especially a city that's aspiring to be one of the places that makes important films. I was I'm very good friends with Mbithi Masia, the filmmaker who made Kati Kati, and that year he had finished making the film. He had shown it at Toronto. It had won the Discovery Prize there, and then he'd gone on to festivals all over the world, literally. And it wasn't going to be showing at a film festival in Nairobi, which seemed like a ridiculous thing. And so we decided, really, in the space of a single conversation, that we would start the NBO Film Festival and premiere Kati Kati at that film festival. And that's
wow.
That's what we did.
That's in 2017.
Yeah, that's right.
And what was the reception like then?
So, I mean, it seemed that there was a real appetite for that. So the first year, we just focused on films that had been made in Kenya, right? And films that were made by Kenyans. And it really was a kind of a retrospective of the cinema that has come out of this country. And we forget that we've been making films for a long time because we sometimes forget to go back and like really celebrate and recognize these films. But we've done it for a while now. And so the reception was great. There was an appetite for it. There was a lot of curiosity about it. There was also a lot of people not sure why we would be making a film festival in a country that doesn't have a very big film industry, you know, a little bit like Noah's Ark, you know, like why this, you know?
Yeah,
be like, it's coming, there's a storm coming. Yeah, we're like, trust me, this is real. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and also we wanted to bring a different kind of cinema to Nairobi than what is predominantly in the mainstream cinema. We love the mainstream cinema, but we also think that there's a lot of other ways of telling stories out there, and there's a lot of other kinds of films that don't necessarily come through the mainstream pipeline. So we wanted to be a channel for that as well.
Right. Yeah. Now, Mogambi, I know you were involved in Kati Kati.
Yes.
What was that like for you?
Oh man, so I will never forget coming out of the lift, the elevator at Prestige, and coming out to the walkway, like the corridor that leads up to the cinemas, and there were so many people there, so many, like hundreds, literally hundreds of people standing waiting to see the film, and it was absolutely nerve-wracking because it was now the full like, oh, we're walking on a red carpet now, and there's a media wall, and there's interviews and everything. It was wonderful to have a filmmaking community there, you know, like people that are actually selected to come and see the film, and have that be the beginning of a cinema run. We had experienced the same thing with Nairobi Half-Life, but it wasn't within a festival setting like this. So it was a wonderful week, was it? I think it was a week, and it was mostly Kenyan films that we were watching, both old and new. It was quite a wonderful experience to be there.
I feel no pressure at all now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we saw that. Don't
So
worry.
many.
No,
yes.
it's going to be great. It's going to be great. I know I wasn't invited for. I mean, I wasn't there, but I did watch. Okay, I'm kidding. I'm just pulling your leg. Look, I fully support not even just like waiting to be invited to go out and buy a ticket, and I did for Kati Kati, and I remember in the middle of the, like, just being like so proud and wanting to scream, but also I was like,
It's that kind of film.
and it just leaves you thinking like, what the hell is, I can't believe I just watched something that was so like thought-provoking. It just forced you to be introspective and like question what really matters, and it was produced by like, you know, our own, and it was just like a moment of pride for me. So Mkamze, tell me about the first time that you knew that acting and art and film was something that you wanted to step into, and how you even transitioned into like going to school for it and everything.
Wow, lifelong questions. So I always say I fell into it, honestly, just like completely. I know that's not like a good selling point, but I really did. It was one of those things, everyone does drama when they're in high school and you kind of do all that stuff. And I went to like A-levels, and they had a really good theater program. So that's the first time I really got into an actual theater program. And then after that, while waiting to go to school, they had this audition for the first time Sarafina was done, and I went to it, and it was kind of like this joke, which is where I met Mugambi, by the way. It's been a whole thing.
So how long have you known each other?
Our first professional acting gig. That was 2003.
2003.
2003.
Like 16 years.
So 16 years.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It has been 16 years. Yeah. So that's where we met, and we were acting together in that. And then that was actually the first time I'd done a professional show. And it was the first time because, again, same thing, where you come into the theater and there's actual crowds of people who've actually paid to come and see the thing. And we had to do an extra show, I remember, because we sold out the tickets.
Yeah.
So that was the first time you're like, oh, this can be a whole thing. Like, it can be a career. So that was the process. And then I went to school about 4 years after that to do film and theater. And I was like, nah, I'm done. Bye, I've gone back home.
No.
So I came back. Although many other reasons.
Yeah,
but, it was also just not what I thought, because I didn't go to a conservatory. I went to a university, which was not what I imagined it would be, which would be acting all day and having fun times. So I came back, and that's just been it ever since. So I always tell people I've worked in an office one day of my life. One.
Wow,
One.
really?
One.
And then on, you just followed your artistic path.
Yeah, so that's just been my life from then on.
Okay. Mugambi, I read that for you, it started when you were 5. You had your first acting debut. And you were just, I mean, the crowd went wild. And they're like, this is a star. See this man?
I really wish it was that was the case. The core audience there was my mom and my sister, who was 3 years old. And it was the first. I was very shy, withdrawn kid.
Okay.
So yes, I was.
Do you find that a lot of actors are like that, or is that?
It's true. A lot of them are like that. It's very true. So very shy, very quiet, very withdrawn, and suddenly here I am with, lights coming on, and all I had to do was beat a drum.
Yeah.
And no one was telling me, be quiet. No one was telling me, behave. Yeah. I was just there playing the drum, and my sister wilded out. Yeah. Like, she went crazy, because she was like, that's my brother. And, I was like, this is not too bad. Right. I think this is something I can carry on doing. Yeah. If under the right circumstances, I can do whatever it is I want, within what's scripted, and wear costume and have lights and have people going crazy. I can keep doing that.
Yeah. And it allows you to, I guess, come out of your shell in a way that you couldn't in like daily interactions.
Any other way, yeah.
Okay.
True.
So what would you say are some of the biggest changes that you've witnessed in the film industry? And let's talk about in Kenya specifically, and in the last, I want to say, 5 years. And maybe Shiva, you could start us off. What are some of the biggest changes you've witnessed?
I mean, I have to say the One Fine Day project has been a huge asset to the growth of the film industry, and has kind of been very preeminent in providing an opportunity for a lot of people to get their films made who may not have been in a position to do so before. And a lot of other people have also gotten like mentorship and training on board of those films, and given them an opportunity basically to get their foot in the door and get started. So, I think there's 7 films that have been made through the One Fine Day project. And so that's been a huge thing. But beyond that, I think that there has been so much, there's been a technological shift that's allowed people to have more access to equipment and better quality equipment. And so some of the barriers to entry have been significantly dropped. There's a lot of skills growth that has happened through like adjacent sectors, like a lot of people have learned about telling visual stories by making music videos, for instance. So there's been an upskilling on that side of things. And there's an ever increasing sort of like hunger to tell our own stories and to see our own bodies represented on film and on television. And so there's been a big shift of more and more, and I would say like a lot of young people, specifically and very intentionally choosing to have careers in the cultural sector broadly, but then therefore being available for like the filmmaking world. And I think the next step now is for us to like really crack open how we actually figure out the commercialization of it, and how does it work as an industry, not just in a sector, not a sector, and not just the craft, but also the industry part. I mean, this has been a significant part of like a lot of other growing and developing economies. It's a major contributor both to the visual perception of a country and the visibility of a country out in the world. but also a huge, huge job creator. It's an industry that's just waiting to be unearthed and properly to be discovered.
Yeah, all right. And Kamze, what would you say as an actor are some of the things that you've witnessed, or changes that you've witnessed in this space?
I think the first thing would be possibility, because when we began, it was not a thing you thought of as a career. It was, everyone went to audition. We went to audition for fun. You know, it was always like, I'm coming here to have fun. Yeah. And now to see people actually be like, this is something I know can be a career, because we couldn't even conceive of that idea. Right. It couldn't be a career, and then it was not going to pay you enough to be a career. So just that idea that now you can actually do this, and it's something that even older people consider a career, and that there's actually a way to make a living, you know, a bit tough, but it's, you know, it's there. Yeah. And then and then that also contributes to how seriously people take it in terms of training. So then you see performances getting better, and you see people engaging more with each other as actors. So there's quite a community of actors who constantly are talking to each other. And then there's been a really huge separation between film and theater, because before it was all the same people. We were all the same people. We were just all the same people. You did theater, you did film. And now I think there's also that idea that people can, if you want to, pick a preference. You know, some of us just want to do the entire route. Yeah. And then definitely with, you know, the technology moving on, it's also meant that you have to think differently of what it means to be in front of camera, you know, which was not a thing you really thought about before. Because with theater, it's just like you're out there, you're doing, and it's, you know, and then suddenly it's a whole different thing when you come to film. It's a craft, and it has a lot to do with what cameras do. You know, what does it mean when you're in front of the camera? How it magnifies you, and so it also is a different skill set. So it's not still just acting, right? So, and then you have younger people who that's their first port of call. So they know that already, which is so exciting. And then I think the idea that people just make stuff now. Because I'll meet people who just be like, so this is the film I made with my friend on my phone. You know, and you're like, oh, okay, it's really good. And, you know, and so there's that possibility, and people have so many stories to tell. And you can definitely see the shift in people just not being as excited about, you know, a Hollywood film, and being like, oh, I just want to see that other film that is from Zambia or from Kenya or from this, which is a complete shift.
Yeah,
you know?
And almost an awakening of I want to consume things that also represent things that are, you know, outside of just what Hollywood feeds us, but also, you know, spaces where I can start to see myself and feel like I'm represented at some level, or just something that's just different and alternative and just challenges me in a different way. Because I mean, if we stick to Hollywood, all we'll get is Avengers, which is great, you know. But you know, we need a little bit more, right? We've got to take a break, ladies and gents. But we'll be right back with more about Nairobi Film Festival in a moment.
will go down in history as the first Kenyan team to host.
Welcome back, ladies and gents. We're here at Parkin by Radisson, and I'm speaking to Sheba Mkamze and Mugambi about Nairobi Film Festival. And before the break, I was asking about the changes that have taken place in the last 5 years or so. And Sheba and you, Mkamze, you explained some of the things that you witnessed. But Mugambi, I want to ask you, what are those changes that you've witnessed, but specifically with regards to how we are consuming content and what the audience responds to. What are some of the biggest changes that you've noted?
I think the single biggest change has been availability of film. I don't know if you guys remember a film called The Bicycle that was directed by a guy called Ingolo Wakea, I think.
Yeah, it had Francis John Onsongo in it.
Yeah, did it? Yes, I think it did. It was a film about a dude who comes onto some money and spends it in a couple of days. I can't remember the exact details of it, but when a film like The Bicycle came out, I think in the mid-90s, there was almost no way to see it if you didn't attend a screening, and it was probably just like one screening, invite only, and then you read about it in the papers for many weeks after that. And I never got to see that film from the mid-90s up until last year. And that's because it's on-demand platforms where you can get a lot of Kenyan films that have come out from last week to many years ago. There's a film called The Battle of the Sacred Tree. That was made, I think it was made in the 80s. A Kenyan film shot on film, 35mm film. That again was not available to be seen for years and years, but is now on YouTube. That, I think, is the single most, when people talk about, Kenya doesn't have content, I'm like, yo, have you actually, signed on to Showmax, for instance, and seen the amount of film that's available there by Kenyans for Kenyans. So as far as consumption goes, we still have a long way to go as far as people putting down money to say, I want to watch this film because it's Kenyan. And I know this is what I can expect of a Kenyan film by this filmmaker or by this production company, this writer, this director, or if it has these actors, I know what to expect. We're sort of getting there now. But I think we're making big strides as far as making our films available. Plan B, a film that came out last year, 1 hour film, or earlier this year, is available entirely on YouTube and has viewership in the millions now. The makers of Plan B before were restricted to cinemas and cinema runs before then. And we had gatekeepers of cinemas who thought that international films sold better. But now there's lots of ways for one's film to get seen. What we need to do is get consumers to actually now get to see the film. And there's still quite a bit of steps that need to be made for that to happen. Which is why I'm grateful for NBO. Because we're getting the films to you. But curation and gatekeeping are not a thing anymore. If you want to see the film, there's actually a way to see it.
There's ways to see it. So let's actually go back to NBO. I thought it was NFF. Sorry.
It's NBO.
It's NBO.
Film Festival.
Yeah, like the flight code.
But like it's NFF,
like Nairobi Film Festival.
It's actually NBO Film Festival.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, now I'm with the lingo. So going back to NBO Film Festival. So you told us about what 2017 was like. Tell me about 2018.
So 2018 is when we really got we premiered Supermodo, another fabulous Kenyan film, but also Disconnect, and we also premiered The New Moon, a documentary that came out of the DocuBox project. And so, we're premiering 3 new Kenyan films at one moment, and these were completely sold out. They were the first tickets to sell out. They sold out way before all the other films that we were showing in the thing. Kind of addressing that fallacy that Kenyans don't want to see Kenyan content. It's just not true. They just are not given enough of an opportunity to get access to that content and to have some kind of an assurance that the content that's being presented is of a good quality, which is really important to us as a film festival. And so we experienced maybe 5 times as many people came to the second festival as
in
from the first. Yes,
yeah.
It was less of just me and my mom watching
Yeah.
films together with my other auntie. Yeah. And it began to look more like a public event.
Right.
And it also became a moment when we were feeling like we were convening a lot of film lovers, film audience people who are like curious and interested in film broadly, but also people from the film sector who would like to see other, well-crafted films shown on the big screen, and to begin to have that communal experience of watching important content together. And so it was a year of big growth for us. We started to program films from the rest of the continent as well. So we had Kenyan films alongside films from the rest of Africa last year. And again, beginning to become a place where, just by doing that, we became a place where people were like, I would like to have my film shown in Nairobi. So that this year we had filmmakers from around the continent beginning to reach out to us directly and be like, hey, I'm a filmmaker in Zimbabwe and I've made this film. Can we show it there? And so you see that immediately there's, we're a tiny group of people, a tiny little cog, but somehow like how cogs work,
yeah,
it sort of
started
to see a bigger ripple effect in the wider sector, and we're really pleased with that.
Yeah. Right. Shiva, you've said something that stuck with me, and that is that you started to see that there are Kenyans and people who are interested in the film industry, and not just interested, but will go out and buy a ticket because they want to watch what Kenyan filmmakers are making. But it also reminded me of something that Wanori said, which got a bit of backlash, but also resonated with me, because essentially what she was saying was that we deserve what we get, in that if we don't go out and sort of buy tickets and demand, I want to see more Kenyan films and, showing in local cinemas, and how is it going to work? And I just wanted to pose that question to you. Do you feel that there is room, to all the three of you, do you feel that there is room for more Kenyans to be, a little bit, more supportive of showing up a little bit more when it comes to celebrating and consuming and buying Kenyan art in whichever form that is? Or do you feel that we already have a thriving community of people who are growing in that you're proud of? What do you feel about this space?
No, I think it's on the way, because I get the frustration, but I also think it takes so much time, because I'll tell you, 16 years. It's very frustrating, but then it takes a lot of time.
And what is frustrating?
It's frustrating. I know that people talk about, they're not coming and people are not showing up,
right.
But it's the process of how long it takes is frustrating. But you know what happens is that it feels like it happens suddenly. I think that's with everything. Like Kenya, one day we were here, we didn't have power, we didn't have blah, blah, and then one day, everyone just can have the business that they want. That kind of thing that happens under the radar. And I think it's related to what you're saying about having filmmakers connect, because that's the first stop. Filmmakers come, and then it becomes a thing, it becomes an event, then other people start to buy in. So it's not one of those things that happen overnight. I think it's on the way, but I also I'm not too attached to the idea of people just don't want to show up, because I don't think that's true as well. I think that it's just that it's a mind shift. It's not about a ticket shift. It's really a mindset thing. Like, again, it relates to possibility and what's available, and people now understanding it as an event, and a film by a Kenyan looks like this, not like what I thought, because you did mention quality. And for a very long time, it's like, it looked a certain way, and now to get people to shift to, it's not going to look how I thought it was going to look, which is why the YouTubes are important and people putting their stuff out there. So I've always kind of felt that the onus is also on us, and like you said, now it's available, and which is when you start to see people be like, okay. A Kenyan film is like that. Okay, I'll go and watch it. So I think we're just in the process of getting to the thriving. We're not the thriving, but we're getting there.
All right. Would you all agree? Yeah?
I think, yes, I agree as well. I think it's going to be a while before we have actual box office numbers showing up for Kenyan movies in Kenya. It's happened before. I mean, Nairobi Half-Life screened at the cinemas for months. I believe it was 7 months. 7 months. That's a long time for a Kenyan film to be seen. And even up until the last month of the run, there were still people showing up. There were still pretty formidable numbers showing up.
Yeah.
Nairobi Half-Life screened in Addis. I remember attending a Nairobi Half-Life screening in Addis for a film festival, and we didn't have that many people show up for it. A couple of days later, within the same festival, I went to watch an Ethiopian film from a celebrated Ethiopian director, and this thing was house full. People packed to the rafters, and it didn't feel like there were people watching a film. It felt like there was a conversation between the film and the people, because there was feedback, literal feedback. People applauding, people agreeing with things that are being said. And I didn't see that again happen with the film until Supermodo happened last year. And again, it was back to the rafters, people having a conversation with the film, making contributions.
Right.
So I was like, this thing that I was seeing in Ethiopia some years back, which I thought would literally be impossible here, is happening.
Yeah.
But we would need Supermodos coming out 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah.
Which is not the case. For people to actually realize that this is a voice, this is an art form that is consistent, that I can expect certain things from, that I can go and commune with every so often.
Yeah.
The every so often is still a bit erratic now. Which now comes to the area of filmmaking. I wish there were more films being made. I wish there was more support from the government in terms of funding, because there's not a single film community on earth that exists, an industry that does not have input from the government. Kenya is very unique in that we are still making films with very minimal support from the government. But if that happened and you had films on the scale of Supermodo coming out, let's say every quarter, and I knew that I could look forward to a film of that staggering quality, then you'd have people show up, and you would have a film making and cinema going community thriving in Nairobi. It's possible.
It's like a relationship. You have to.
It is
the
a
audience.
relationship.
Yeah,
There's give and take. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I think all 3 of you have at some point mentioned YouTube. I believe you've all mentioned YouTube. And I'm curious to know what it's done to the filmmaking industry. If you think it's allowed, and I guess I'll leave it to you. How has YouTube impacted the film industry in Kenya and globally too? Yeah, Shiva.
I actually wanted to say something about the Wanori comment.
Right.
Let's go back. Okay.
Because I feel like I felt very bad that Wanori got so much backlash for that comment.
Too.
I felt like it was wholly undeserved, because I think that what she pointed out was that audiences have an agency in ensuring that the kind of content that they want to see is seen. Yes, filmmakers have got to make the films, but they're making the films. There are the films. And if you want there to be more films like that, like the really very least thing that you can do is show up for the one that has already been made. Nobody's asking you to love it. Nobody's asking it to become your favorite film. But if you don't see it, there isn't even the beginnings of the possibility of a conversation about whether we're on the right track or not. And another important thing that she was talking about, I mean, her film is banned in Kenya, is that, even that capacity that we're giving, one agency of government to regulate on our behalf our film sector in a way that doesn't necessarily work for us, that's actually putting barriers in the way of filmmakers. If we don't want that as audiences, as people in the production sector, we also have to engage with making that get removed. Just in the same way that Kenyans were like, well, we ain't gonna get the Huduma numbers done in that time. You're gonna have to extend it, And that's it. Like, we just have to be as vocal and as present to some of the impediments that exist.
Right.
And I just couldn't, I didn't understand what that
I think it was taken out of context, and if you didn't watch the whole thing, you'd be like, what did you say? But if you did, you followed through with everything that she was saying and how we've been telling stories for the longest time. But really, like you were saying, the onus is on us to go and show up. It's like,
also
here.
on us.
Here's
And
my
she
money.
really used
Buy
the word also. She said it's
Also.
on us.
Yeah.
And I think, and as far as the difficulty of getting the content and so on, we also, as audience people, need to recognize that we have to seek out the content we want. We're used to getting fed content by large organizations who sponsor big concerts, and then there's a billboard and there's a thing. And then you want the tiny NBO just got started festival to be able to announce itself, like literally on a text message to your phone and a billboard and a reminder, and then I'll go, And we got a lot of flack last year for like, this report did not publicize this thing well after it ended, right? And I'm not trying to be a hater, but I'm also not trying to like not say my truth. I am trying. We are trying very hard to get the word out there to people, right? But there is a limit to the resources that are available, and there's a limit to like how much we can do at any one time. Right. But what's the part that you're doing? You know, you go to a new city, you don't ask the church that you want to join to send you a flyer and a poster and whatever. You are like, well, I'm a Catholic. Where are the Catholic churches in this place? It's the same thing. Well, I'm a person that likes film. What's going on in film in this city? And then you will find your community, you will find your people.
I'm glad you said that, Shiva. I'm glad, because I was feeling the same, that it was unfair how she was treated, you know, how people responded to her. And I think most of the people who were responding just didn't have much to do on that day. I really do believe that. And they were like, what is happening? Oh, what did you, that sentence? Let me take that sentence out. And then just like run with that. Yeah. But we've got to take a break. When we come back, we will address the YouTube question. We'll be back in a moment, ladies and gentlemen.
has done, which is made people aware of their right to content. Because part of that reaction was, we're not aware of what content means. Like the idea that you have a right to see what you want to see. The idea that you have a right to say, not just the filmmaker should be fighting for it, but you have a right to say, why are you banning that? Like, it's actually not constitutional, you know? Why are you banning that? I have a right to see it. And what YouTube has done is, because it's independent and you can go put whatever you want and you can go look at whatever you want, people are suddenly becoming aware. It's like, wait, so then why can you tell me I can't watch this thing, you know? So that already has opened up a lot of doors. And for me, it's more, I mean, of course, for the filmmaker, it's a lot because you can now put it. But then I think for the audience, it's kind of like, I have a right to content. I have a right to see what I want to see. And you don't get to tell me. And I think that's, for me, the biggest thing, because that's when you see the millions of views and the da-da-da-da, because it's like, oh, okay, I can see whatever I want. And it happened with music as well, because that's how music videos went through that whole, what do you call it, evolution, where they were like, and then suddenly you just get better and better, because now people can tell you and be like, what is this? What have you done? And da-da-da-da. And then you get a lot of feedback as the person who's making the content. And then that creates the loop of quality getting better as well. Yeah.
Right. Any more, or do we?
I think YouTube enabled like she said, made a democracy of content.
Right.
Yeah, if it's available, the right content finds the right audience, which is how it actually ought to be. When we talk about KFCB, KFCB just enables classification of movies. So the right movie finds the right audience, not the barring or the censoring on don't watch this.
Yeah.
And I think YouTube has done that. YouTube is the second most popular search engine after Google, which is interesting. Like you have so many people interacting with YouTube now, because that has become probably their sole home of motion picture entertainment, aside from other online things like your Twitters and your Vines and whatever, or your Instagram stories or that sort of thing. But YouTube has sort of made not just the content of entertainment accessible to people, but also what kind of content moves forward. So if I talk about Guy, you know exactly what I'm talking about, you know, and that has democratized memes to people. So I think YouTube has taught us a different way of consuming entertainment, where I come to you to find the entertainment. You don't come to me and tell me what to watch. I will decide what that is. And I think that's progress.
Yeah, and
Definitely.
I've also seen and heard filmmakers who previously were in the traditional line of doing things, which is like make a film and you try and like, hey, please buy it, sell it, can you allow your audience to watch this? And they said, actually, never mind, I'll put it on YouTube. I don't need you, it's fine, I'll figure it out. So it's allowed for them to be able to create without any kind of gatekeeper saying yes or no. And speaking of YouTube, I know your film Lusala has a trailer on YouTube. And now I just wanted to jump into that. Can you tell us a little bit about
Lusala?
Lusala.
Yes.
What is it about, and what can we expect?
Sure. Yes. Lusala is a feature film starring Brian Ogola, Kamze Matela, Stacey Awawero, who was in Supermodel. It's a film about a young man who's grew up in an abusive home upcountry, and is adopted by a wealthy family in Nairobi until he comes of age. And when he does, he's asked, you know, it's time, go make a man of yourself. Are you ready to leave the nest? And he says he is. However, he discovers very quickly that he's not, because the demons from his past come back.
To haunt
and now
him.
he has to deal with them alone.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a film about childhood trauma, film about family, and the fabric and the bond of family, and about mental wellness.
Right.
Yep.
What was it like for you playing, being a part of Lusala?
It was so many things. So first of all, it was really great, number one, to work with Mugambi as a director, because it's nice it's so good to see people you've worked with for so long come into their own, and now you're directing a film, and he's a really good director.
Thank you.
Really, this is the director-actor's love. No, so it was a really good experience, because before that we had gone into workshop for the acting bits, and we'd done a lot of scenes and improved a lot of things, so which means you're so in the space, and it's the first time I've done anything where I've not felt like I left anything behind. Because a lot of the time the film wraps and you're like, oh, I should have, because you live with the character for very long after, and then like 3 months later you're like, oh my gosh, now I get it, you know. So, and that's the first time I didn't feel like that, where it felt like it was done, wrapped. Brian is so amazing. It's so amazing. It's like this was one of the things where we're like, finally, the world.
Yeah. Oh, Brian was meant to be here today, but couldn't make it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's really good, and so just the entire and then the subject matter really makes you as an actor think as well.
Right.
So it was just a really good experience. It was fun times.
Yeah.
But it was also very emotionally harrowing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just my kind of movie.
Yes.
When is it going to premiere?
So premiere is opening film of the festival.
Yeah.
It's going to be screening again on the 14th, and then the cinematic run will begin after the festival is over.
So 6th and the 14th. Yes. All right. So what are some of the themes that are coming out in some of the movies that are, or films that are going to be airing? Because I know there's 18 in total, right, Shiba? And I know generally art, or even if we're talking specifically about film, the themes that come out of film is usually like an indication of the zeitgeist or general like space and feelings and mood of a nation or a generation. So what are some of those themes that are coming out that we should expect to like see?
Wow, that is a wonderful question.
Yes,
Think about it now.
Well, let me start by talking about what our intention was with the curation of this year's festival. We were very interested in the new category of films that we're bringing on board were films from South America and the Caribbean, specifically the Black diaspora, right? So Black South American films and from the Afro-Caribbean films as well as films from the rest of Africa. Yeah. And there is a kind of a journey, at least I think in Black cinema, of which Kenya is a part, of course, of like a deeper internal self-discovery, right? And I think Lusala like fits squarely into this this conversation in terms of like an individual sort of like excavation of a traumatic past. It's so weird. We just did a play with this theme as well, right?
Yeah.
And, but yeah, really, that's why the zeitgeist word was nice. But also, like, is it a calling in this moment?
Is that written on the body, the
yes,
play?
written on the body of the play, which Mugambi also directed brilliantly.
Oh man, yeah. I need to sleep soon.
Right, we really do need to have taken a break in between these things. But so there is that kind of a great big conversation about like our discovery of our internal journey, and on the one hand, but also the possibility of living your life freely, which is a broader conversation that we're having even here in our society right now about who's going to be allowed to live their life how, and who's going to be allowed to regulate how other people live their lives. So I feel like that is a kind of underlying film of sort of like of freedom and of freeing of the mind as well, right? So I think that is the kind of the zeitgeist that we're in.
Love that. Yeah. I love that, and I love that. Really, that's I think touching at a nerve. That's where we are, and there's a lot of conversations and a lot of like pushback against like, don't tell me how to dress, who to have in my bed, where to, I don't know, take my children, or how I should live my life, essentially. Like there's that kind of pushback, and I think that's worth celebrating, and anything that celebrates that freedom, because essentially isn't that what we want? To be free, to be who we are, and to be the best versions of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right, and exploring what those fears are that are having, like, you know, fears from like our past experiences, even as a society, that are holding us in a certain place that forces us to react to people with fear, you know? Yeah. Whether it's even people that express any kind of difference, whether it's like ethnic difference or, you know, any kind of difference. What is it that's doing that, you know?
Yeah, cause I like that, because I think sometimes, especially when you're in this space and you're like, I want to be free, I want to be free, it's very hard to see it from the other side of why doesn't the other person want you to be free? Like, what's that about? So it's good to have films that kind of explore that, because then you know how to have a conversation about moving forward. Right. Because right now it just feels like everyone's just locking horns, but I don't think, and it's hard to say, but I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning and I'm just going to mess with Mugambi's life, you know, and he must not go on with his life. It's like, what am I afraid of? What's that? And then I think getting people to realize it's about you It's not about what this person is doing. Your whole emotion is not about the other person. And film is so good for that because it's that you're not being lectured. No one's wrong, you know, because it's also that idea of, which is one of the things I loved also about my role in this film, because I am on the other side. It's that idea of understanding why would someone do that? Why would they come from there? What are they afraid of? And it's easier then to see yourself being that person than when you're feeling attacked in an argument or a conversation or in a lecture. So I think that's the thing about film. It's so important for that. It also makes villains recognize themselves, you know, so.
Oh gosh, this is just for my soul. I love it so much. I feel like I'm listening to one of my Oprah Super Soul
that's wonderful.
conversations, and I'm like, let's talk about fear. Where does it come from? And actually, it takes me back to something I was listening to, and they were basically saying if you wanted to convert like a Nazi communist, you don't just go like, hey, what you're doing is bad, it's terrible, don't believe in that. You start by asking, so where do your beliefs come from? Can you, like, and really it's trying to understand the root of that. And what they were saying is that it often comes from just passed on to generation, and not a true understanding of where, but often when you trace it down to its very core, there is an element of fear, and
definitely,
you know, seeing something that you recognize in someone else is familiar, and it just you know, scaring you to the extent that you start to reject it, control it, trying to minimize it. This, I mean, get your tickets. This is gonna be good. This is gonna be good. All right, so very important question.
Yeah.
What do people wear to? What do people wear to the premieres? Do we get a red carpet? Do we come in like gowns? Should we get a stylist? Should we come in jeans and like casual? And
What do you wear to a premiere? Well, you know, it's a premiere after all. Is there a way to be
within the theme of freedom?
Yeah, something. I love that. So much sets you free, right?
right.
Praise you. But you know, it's a premiere, so it's a big celebration, of course, of like a film that's being shown for the very first time, and that, you know, years of work have gone. It's literally years of work that have gone into making it both beautiful and a rigorous amount of work to bring it to the most elevated level that it can be at. So it's nice to reflect that by also styling up for the occasion. If you want to. But yeah, we're all about freedom.
I really appreciate it when people, even to the theatre, dress up to the theatre, because for me I see it as there's this really interesting discussion about why Italians are into fashion and why Africans also had this thing of how you dress and how you turned up, and it was always about not about looking a certain way to impress people, but about a reflection of your inner state of how you're feeling, and telling that to other people before, so that they don't have to question you. It's kind of like, oh, I now know how you are. So so that's how I think of it, because yes, it's kind of sometimes like, oh my gosh, I have to dress up. But then when I do think about it as a celebration and as honoring that format, like honoring film and honoring that, then that's a different thing altogether. So I'm like, I guess dress to honor the space.
Yeah.
What she said. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. No, I'm not. No, not a suit, but there'll be something bespoke. Yeah. About this is more behind the scenes thing. The last time that a film crew hangs out after the film is done, after this rigorous process that takes weeks, months, years, is the wrap party. And after the wrap party, the next time they're going to see each other is the premiere.
Okay.
That's when they all come back together, and it can be anything from a few months to a couple of years.
Oh.
Yeah. Our Nairobi Half-Life came out 2 years after it was shot, to give you an idea.
What?
We shot Nairobi Half-Life close to 10 years ago. Yeah.
Wow.
When you consider that it's been a while since this bunch of people that did this very audacious act of putting this work of art together, come together to celebrate what they've done. You could have film premieres with nothing but the filmmakers alone, and they'd be just as excited to be there. So just like she said, we dress up to reflect. It's victory clothes. Okay. That's what we dressed up in our war clothes. Now we're wearing our victory costume to show you, yo, we made this thing. Yeah.
Victory clothes.
Yes.
Yeah, with freedom sprinkled.
Yes,
all over it.
absolutely. Yeah.
They barely recognize each other.
Okay.
It's true. That's very true.
Costume.
Yeah. Last time I saw you was in your
Hands
war
with like your-
costume.
yeah.
Now your
God.
victory
Yeah.
wardrobe looks wonderful.
Especially crew, that's true.
Especially
the
crew.
Yeah.
The crew are always like, you know, looking like they are in a war zone.
Yeah.
You know, like the boots, military boots, and they're all just like in this, like
all
really
covered
dressed
up.
down,
Yeah.
because they're behind the camera,
Yeah.
and then suddenly it's like, who are you? Sometimes actually you go through the who are you.
Yeah,
It's
like
wait, did you work on
You
this?
can't
it happens. It happens sometimes, and you're like, wow, look at you. It's wonderful.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
This has
Thank
been
you.
like food for my soul, and I'm sure for your soul too if you're watching. So where can people sign up if they want to be part of it next year, or buy the tickets? Maybe she brings.
So everything is on nbo.com.
Okay.
NBO
Film Festival.
nbofilmfest.com.
Film Fest.
Yes.
nbofilmfest.com. Okay.
And you can get the tickets to all the events on MOOC. And then there are some amazing workshops that if you're a filmmaker, you can sign up for as well. There's a producing workshop, there's a distribution workshop, there's a pitching workshop, and they're like first class workshops, so you can get involved in it.
Yeah, and you can also follow them on Twitter. I know it's also NBO Film Fest, right?
Yes.
Follow them on Twitter so we can know it whenever there's something new that's coming up. Right?
And,
we can support, and we can't say we didn't know, you didn't know, guys.
You can also follow Lusala. Lusala
Right.
has its own
Right.
account
Yeah.
on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram and Twitter.
Okay.
Just look for Lusala Film.
Okay.
After NBO is done, it'll begin its own run at the cinemas,
Yeah.
which is open to everyone. So please, just so that you'll know where to see
Yeah.
the film, follow
Lusala.
Lusala Film. Yeah.
Let's go out and give those numbers out there. So
Yes,
people don't
we'd love it.
show up.
Yeah.
All right, thanks again.
Thank you.
This has been lovely.
Thank you, S.
And thank you so much for watching as well. Thank you to Parkin by Radisson. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 a.m. as usual. But for now, I'm going to love you and leave you. Bye, everybody.